family delivering value and interpreting the world's best books. Hello, this is Sally Book Talk. Today we're diving into a book called Game Over: The Global Conquest History of Nintendo. Have you ever played games from Nintendo? What are your thoughts on their games? Feel free to leave your comments in the discussion section. At the closing ceremony of the 2016 Rio Olympics, former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made a brief appearance dressed as Mario, participating in the performance, and the effect was surprisingly good. Without a doubt, Mario has become synonymous with the export of Japanese gaming culture. It holds a special place in the hearts of gamers worldwide. And the creator who brought Mario to life and pushed it globally is Nintendo, the giant of Japan's electronic gaming industry. The name Nintendo isn't unfamiliar to many. Beloved games like Mario, Pokemon, and The Legend of Zelda all come from this company, and it's a major player in both the software and hardware sides of the gaming industry. As early as 1991, with just 850 employees and under 5,000 global staff, Nintendo raked in nearly $1 billion in pre-tax annual profit, skyrocketing to become one of the world's most profitable companies, even surpassing auto industry giants in areas like growth potential, stock performance, and market reach, both domestically and internationally. Toyota is Japan's undisputed top enterprise, but in the first half of the 20th century, it was just a company focused on selling playing cards. So, how did Nintendo start from scratch in Japan? And how did it conquer global gamers and build a gaming empire single-handedly? The author of this book, David Sheff, is an American journalist who's interviewed big names like John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and his work has appeared in outlets like Rolling Stone and The Observer. In this book, David Sheff conducted in-person interviews with key figures in Nintendo's business empire, like Hiroshi Yamauchi, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Minoru Arakawa, gathering tons of authentic and little-known first-hand insights. So, before this, no one had managed to interview so many pivotal people and chronicle Nintendo's critical journey from its 1889 founding to navigating challenges in 1992. Because of this, the book is seen as a vital historical record of Nintendo's business empire and is often cited as a key reference in electronic gaming history. Next up, I'll cover this book in 5 parts. Part 1, Starting from Scratch, From Toy Workshop to Gaming Newcomer. Part 2, Gaming Ground, Nintendo's Winning Strategies. Part 3, Crossing Borders, The Tough Pioneering of the North American Market. Part 4, The Murky Business Game of Copyright Disputes. Part 5, Game Over, Potential Crises and Challenges. First, let's dive into Part 1, Starting from Scratch, From Toy Workshop to Gaming Newcomer. Nintendo's history traces back over a century ago to Meiji 22, which is 1889, when Fusajiro Yamauchi founded Nintendo Playing Card Company. Nintendo is often understood as heaven's will cannot be defied. The author finds it more convincing to interpret it as man proposes, God disposes. As for its origin, even Hiroshi Yamauchi, who led it to gaming giant status, frankly admitted he couldn't be sure. So, we won't dig deeper into it. Early Nintendo was a classic family business, starting with Japanese traditional playing cards made using ancient methods. Through relentless efforts of 3 generations of the Yamauchi family, Nintendo expanded to modern Western cards like poker, built its own production lines and sales networks, and became a highly efficient, disciplined company. Unlike their smooth sailing in business, for 3 generations, the Yamauchi family had no boys, so they relied on sons-in-law to inherit the business. This curse wasn't broken until the birth of Fusajiro Yamauchi's great-grandson, Hiroshi Yamauchi. However, Hiroshi Yamauchi's childhood wasn't happy. His father abandoned the family when he was just 5, and his grandparents were very strict with him. Perhaps due to his father's absence and grandparents' coldness growing up, adult Hiroshi Yamauchi though handsome and spirited, always came across as proud, autocratic, stern, and hot-tempered. In 1949, at his grandfather's funeral, the 21-year-old Hiroshi Yamauchi, as the only boy in the family, was tasked with taking over Nintendo. He had to drop out of Waseda University's law department and become the third president. Bo, bo, oh. Young and fiery Hiroshi Yamauchi loved challenges, and with the three fires of a new official, he wasn't content to just maintain Nintendo's past success. With grand ambitions, he always planned to build his own business empire based on the family enterprise. First, he purged conservative forces and anyone threatening his authority within Nintendo, and reformed the company's manufacturing processes and marketing strategies. For instance, they introduced lots of advanced machinery to boost production efficiency, coordinated with distribution centers and wholesalers, and built a nationwide sales network across Japan. From then on, Nintendo established a complete integrated production supply sales system. However, during a U.S. trip, he noticed that global billionaires often diversified across industries with higher profit margins than traditional manufacturing. And he strongly felt Nintendo shouldn't limit itself to cards. So after returning, he eagerly expanded into high-profit sectors like food, taxis, and hotels. But these new ventures were overreaching. For Nintendo, with no experience in these industries, it was too aggressive, not only unsuccessful but nearly jeopardizing the company. This debut failure sobered Hiroshi Yamauchi from his inflated ambitions, making him reevaluate Nintendo's direction. He realized Nintendo's most valuable asset was its playing card network across Japanese toy stores and department stores. Therefore, Nintendo should deepen within entertainment rather than blindly diversify. Once he clarified this mindset, later in 1969, Hiroshi Yamauchi established the Pivotal Games division and recruited amateur inventors who loved tinkering with parts and assembling toys. Their job was brainstorming new ideas daily. Nintendo would then turn promising concepts into actual toys for sale. This creativity-driven strategy not only won customer favor but attracted brilliant engineers passionate about toy design. That's how inventions like the Ultra Machine, Love Tester, Ultra Hand, and Beam Gun, these seemingly absurd creations, came to life, bringing joy to countless families, and generated solid profits for Nintendo. But prosperity didn't last. In 1973, Japan faced the global oil crisis. Disposable income plummeted and entertainment spending nosedived. Nintendo's toy workshop turned from profit to deficit. With investments across Japan frozen, cash flow problems nearly bankrupted them. At this critical juncture, traditional toys couldn't save Nintendo. They desperately needed a breakthrough product. Just then, the refreshing new video game consoles caught Hiroshi Yamauchi's attention. Yamauchi had always been keenly aware of industry shifts. New developments never escaped his notice. By observing the early stages of the American gaming industry, he realized electronic computers, originally for offices, had become affordable and mature enough for entertainment. So he negotiated licenses to produce and sell overseas consoles in Japan, then partnered with electronics firms to develop gaming systems, diving headfirst into the video game market. And although Yamauchi himself was confident, how big the console market could become remained uncertain. It wasn't until 1980, with the successful launch of Game & Watch, that doubts vanished. How popular was this console? Statistics show Game & Watch sold 32 million units globally in just 3 years. Considering Japan's population was under 120 million then, that's equivalent to nearly every household owning one.
Game & Watch's explosive popularity speaks for itself.
Consequently, Nintendo not only repaid bank debts but earned a net profit of 4 billion yen. The invention of Game & Watch came from a Nintendo designer's observation while riding the Shinkansen. He noticed bored commuters fiddling with calculators, sparking a new idea. Why not develop a device for gaming anytime, anywhere? This concept got Yamauchi's immediate support, leading to the 1980 release of Game & Watch. Portable, affordable, and watch-like for on-the-go fun, receiving rave reviews at launch. This landmark success established Nintendo's foothold in the console market, making it a remarkable industry newcomer. Through Game & Watch, Nintendo completed its transition from toy workshop to console manufacturer, fully committing to the emerging video game industry. But facing so many game console manufacturers, how will Hiroshi Yamauchi lead Nintendo to break through? Next, we'll cover part 2, Gaining a Foothold. Nintendo's winning strategies. According to the author, Nintendo's winning strategies are threefold. First, improving product cost performance ratio. Second, focusing on user reputation. Third, putting strong emphasis on game software. First, let's discuss the first major strategy, improving product cost performance ratio. To preserve the hard-won achievements, Hiroshi Yamauchi painstakingly handled everything himself, and finally, a new dominant product was about to emerge. At that time, after examining most competitors' products, Hiroshi Yamauchi believed Nintendo must develop a console that other companies couldn't imitate within a year. Moreover, the performance must be so good that consumers could choose it with their eyes closed to firmly establish a foothold. Oh, this required using higher-level chips and peripherals, inevitably increasing the console's cost and price. In other words, Hiroshi Yamauchi faced a dilemma: either give up performance advantage or abandon price advantage. After careful consideration, Hiroshi Yamauchi decided to work on every detail to ensure this new product had the highest cost-performance ratio. On one hand, he had designers eliminate unnecessary devices, like keyboards and disk drives, relying only on controllers and cartridges for the console's main functions. But this didn't mean Hiroshi Yamauchi intended to sacrifice the console's quality. For key memory and chips, he demanded manufacturers compress capacity while ensuring performance surpassed other companies. On the other hand, he priced the console at 14,800 yen, about 750 yuan, less than half of competitors' prices. Thus, this console became hugely popular after its 1983 release. It was Japan's first home computer, commonly known as FC or Famicom. Beyond pursuing extreme cost-performance ratio, Nintendo also placed great importance on its reputation among consumers, which was its second winning strategy. And the Famicom's massive sales brought Nintendo unprecedented popularity, but soon an unexpected incident occurred. Just 6 months after Famicom's launch, more retailers reported console crashes to Nintendo, with the issue traced to an integrated circuit. At the time, engineers considering costs suggested replacing products only for complaining consumers, but Hiroshi Yamauchi decided to recall all existing units. This decision, though causing Nintendo to miss the 1983 Christmas sale season with a direct loss of over 1.5 billion yen, successfully preserved their reputation and built consumer trust. Subsequent soaring sales eventually offset this loss. Statistics show that from its 1983 release to 2003 discontinuation, the Famicom sold 61.91 million units over 20 years. This record stood until late 2020, when Nintendo's own new console surpassed it. Nintendo's unprecedented success also relied on Hiroshi Yamauchi's emphasis on game software. Yamauchi believed that no matter how powerful the hardware, a console's value is realized through software. What players truly want are great games. Moreover, despite Famicom's success, any company could eventually create similar or superior hardware. Thus, Yamauchi asserted that Nintendo needed unbeatable, universally loved games to stay ahead, marking Nintendo's second critical turning point. Yamauchi stressed independence and innovation in game development, so he separated game R&D from corporate structure and personally became development director. This ensured game development was driven purely by creativity, free from marketing interference. Additionally, he had three lead engineers work independently and competitively, dramatically boosting employee initiative and creativity. In this environment, games like Metroid and The Legend of Zelda were born. But among all Nintendo titles, the one that truly established their dominance and popularity was the Super Mario series by genius designer Shigeru Miyamoto. Let's briefly explore Miyamoto's background. Born in rural Kyoto, his childhood blended art and adventure. At home, he immersed himself in reading and drawing, meticulously crafting unique characters with personalities and backstories. Outside, he explored hometown hills, streams, and caves. Next, I'll cover this book in 5 parts.
Part 1. Starting from scratch. From toy workshop to gaming newcomer.
Part 2. Gaining ground, Nintendo's winning strategies. Part 3. Crossing borders, the tough pioneering of the North American market. Part 4. The murky business game of copyright disputes. Part 5. Game over, potential crises and challenges. First, let's dive into part 1. Starting from scratch, from toy workshop to gaming newcomer. Nintendo's history traces back over a century ago to Meiji 22, which is 1889, when Fusajiro Yamauchi founded Nintendo Playing Card Company. Nintendo is often understood as heaven's will cannot be defied. The author finds it more convincing to interpret it as man proposes, God disposes. As for its origin, even Hiroshi Yamauchi, who led it to gaming giant status, frankly admitted he couldn't be sure. So we won't dig deeper into it. Early Nintendo was a classic family business, starting with Japanese traditional playing cards made using ancient methods. Through relentless efforts of 3 generations of the Yamauchi family, Nintendo expanded to modern Western cards, like poker, built its own production lines and sales networks, and became a highly efficient, disciplined company. Unlike their smooth sailing in business, for 3 generations, the Yamauchi family had no boys, so they relied on sons-in-law to inherit the business. This curse wasn't broken until the birth of Fusajiro Yamauchi's great-grandson, Hiroshi Yamauchi. However, Hiroshi Yamauchi's childhood wasn't happy. His father abandoned the family when he was just 5, and his grandparents were very strict with him. Perhaps due to his father's absence and grandparents' coldness growing up, adult Hiroshi Yamauchi, though handsome and spirited, always came across as proud, autocratic, stern, and hot-tempered. And in 1949, at his grandfather's funeral, the 21-year-old Hiroshi Yamauchi, as the only boy in the family, was tasked with taking over Nintendo. He had to drop out of Waseda University's law department and become the 3rd president. Young and fiery, Hiroshi Yamauchi loved challenges, and with the 3 fires of a new official, he wasn't content to just maintain Nintendo's past success. Despite their incompatible personalities, Hiroshi Yamauchi still highly valued his son-in-law and wanted him to work for Nintendo. At a family gathering in 1980, Hiroshi Yamauchi revealed to Minoru Arakawa Nintendo's plan to enter the US market and invited him to join. So they clicked right away, and Minoru Arakawa was named Nintendo's trailblazer for the American market. His first job was cracking into the coin-op arcade scene, which was no walk in the park. First off, back then, Nintendo had no US branch, and its profits stateside came just from licensing fees to other companies. That meant Arakawa had to build the market pretty much from the ground up. Even worse, the US company started with just the Arakawa couple as staff, and they had to scout office locations themselves. Secondly, as a newbie in gaming, Arakawa's gut feel for game quality paled next to Yamauchi's, and he lacked market savvy. This gap needed fast fixing. So Arakawa turned to his father-in-law for help, saying he desperately needed a fresh game to turn things around. Well, the designer who rushed in to save the day was none other than Shigeru Miyamoto, then just an intern. He was asked to create his first game, Donkey Kong, which is basically Mario's origin story. Donkey Kong's playful, innocent vibe was worlds apart from arcade games back then, which were packed with sex and violence. So distributors weren't keen, but Hiroshi Yamauchi pushed it to market anyway, overruling objections. In the end, the game sold 60,000 arcade units from Nintendo. Decent, but just a small win. But for Nintendo diving into arcades, it was a solid landing, and soon, a confident Arakawa got his father-in-law's next mission: recreate the Famicom's Japanese success in the US market. Why did Hiroshi Yamauchi decide that? Simple reason. Coin-op arcades were in game halls everywhere, letting Nintendo America hold its head high, but a home console reaching millions was way more profitable. Plus, the Famicom brought huge profits to Nintendo Japan in 1985, so why not copy it in North America? But it wasn't that easy. North America's console market had a rough past. In 1983, US gaming giant Atari imploded internally, and with tons of crappy games plus crazy price wars, it tanked the North American video game market. Industry revenue plummeted from $3.02 to just $100 million, a staggering 97% drop. Countless game companies went bankrupt. In this climate, all toy store owners were hostile to video games, so buyers refused to purchase anything related to video games. Frankly, besides gamers still craving games, nobody wanted anything to do with video games. Some told Minoru Arakawa to abandon selling consoles in the US, saying it'd be easier to sell ice in the Arctic.
But he saw this tough market as an opportunity instead.
To ease retailers' concerns, he rebranded video games as entertainment systems and consoles as control decks to reduce American buyers' resistance to Nintendo. He also ditched Nintendo's usual tough stance, promising stores no upfront fees and full returns for unsold units. Plus, he rolled out diverse ads, teaming up with Pepsi and McDonald's, and hosting the Nintendo World Championships across 29 U.S. cities. Contestants competed locally in qualifiers divided by age, under 11, 12 to 17, and 18 plus. Group winners got trophies, $50, and finals tickets. Finalists then competed for $10,000 savings bonds, cars, 40-inch rear projection TVs, and gold Mario trophies. This campaign was Arakawa's masterpiece, leveraging people's chase for big prizes. Psychology. Nintendo's name appeared on every American street corner.
Finally, to connect with players, Arakawa funded a hotline answering game-related questions, building Nintendo's image. This won player praise and made customer feedback genuinely effective.
Beyond short-term tactics, Arakawa showed long-term vision. To expand market share, he sent marketers to chains and department stores to showcase Nintendo's Japanese culture and strong financials, turning them into long-term partners. Under Minoru Arakawa's leadership, Nintendo of America started from scratch and ultimately secured a foothold in the North American gaming market. After this phase, Nintendo truly became a globally influential gaming giant. As the saying goes, the taller the tree, the stronger the wind. Just as Nintendo was thriving, trouble came knocking. Now we enter Part 4, the murky business game of copyright disputes. This section involves the game we all know, Tetris. Tetris's rules are so simple that anyone from kids to grandparents can understand them. Yet, compared to its straightforward gameplay, its copyright disputes are incredibly convoluted. Tetris was created by Soviet programmer Alexei Pajitnov, who worked at a computer research center developing sound recording software. In 1984, Pajitnov and colleagues developed Tetris during off hours using the center's computers. Unexpectedly, this little game quickly spread among coworkers, captivating everyone who tried it. However, under Soviet law, software developed at research centers wasn't individually owned, but state intellectual property. Moreover, Soviet IP laws had glaring loopholes, especially regarding copyright transfers, with no designated contacts. This loophole was first noticed by Robert Stein, a British software executive. He reasoned that, since negotiating with the Soviet government wasn't working, why not contact the creator directly? Mistakenly believing Stein had government approval, Pajitnov was thrilled and immediately agreed. Thus, with an incomplete copyright chain, Tetris rights were repeatedly resold, planting seeds for future disputes. Soon, the truth emerged. Stein received infringement notices from Soviet trade agencies declaring current Tetris releases illegal and demanding renegotiation. Even after paying settlements, Stein only secured exclusive computer version rights. He repeatedly tried negotiating rights for other platforms, but received no responses. So, when Stein learned he had a chance to renegotiate the license in Moscow, he dropped his guard, mistakenly thinking all rights were already his. And muff. Meanwhile, in 1987, Nintendo of America's Minoru Arakawa was preparing to launch the new handheld Game Boy. Given its processing speed and battery limits, games like Adventure Island struggled to run well.
But a compact, polished game like Tetris, that was pure gold. So for them, securing Tetris's rights was non-negotiable.
But when discussing licensing with Stein, who claimed to hold the rights, Arakawa noticed he kept dodging specifics. Arakawa shrewdly sensed Stein didn't actually have the Tetris license. They bypassed Stein and contacted the Soviet Trade Agency directly, offering an advance far larger than Stein or others had proposed, ultimately snagging Tetris's handheld and console rights. When the clueless Stein arrived in Moscow, focusing entirely on payment deadlines and royalties in the agreement, he missed that computer was narrowly defined in the New Deal, covering only PCs, not handhelds or consoles.
Weeks later, discovering the truth, a defeated Stein could only shout that he'd been tricked by the Soviets and Nintendo. Even as competitors clung to the copyright issue, even leveraging political ties.
By reaching out to Soviet leader Gorbachev, they still couldn't overturn the secret deal. The winner remained Nintendo, who'd carefully planned, swiftly seized the opening, and put up the most cash. They secured not just the imminent Game Boy version, but exclusive home console rights too. As folks said, Ben, want kids to buy Game Boy, bundle it with Super Mario.
But want everyone to buy Game Boy, you had to bundle Tetris.
Tetris eventually sold over 100 million copies, with Nintendo pocketing a huge chunk of the profits. And Tetris creator Alexei Pajitnov was truly valued by Nintendo, who understood game development. They funded his own game company to develop mini-games for Windows and MSN. This convoluted yet brilliant Tetris rights battle ended with Nintendo dominating the North American handheld market. So where would Nintendo go next? Let's enter the final part. Game over, potential crises and challenges. Though Nintendo's dominance brought huge profits, it also bred resentment, making the author wonder if Nintendo's empire was nearing its end. So what challenges did Nintendo face?
The toughest was piracy.
To protect profits, Nintendo once required all game cartridges for its consoles to be manufactured exclusively by them. This caused game shortages and kept prices high. Retailers complained, but few dared challenge Nintendo's dominance. But markets react fast to profitable opportunities. If official games were expensive and scarce, why not make pirated ones? Though piracy sounds shady, it's way more appealing to average players.
So whenever Nintendo games boomed, piracy surged too.
Despite improving console security chips and anti-piracy efforts, it only treated symptoms, not the root cause. Even today, many players use hacked consoles and pirated cartridges.
Beyond piracy, other game companies also threatened Nintendo's position.
Domestic rival Sega, and later Sony, challenged Nintendo in consoles, taking significant market share. Globally, giants like Tencent, NetEase, and Microsoft also posed serious competition. More importantly, besides external threats, Nintendo faced internal issues too. Nintendo, once a family business, had 3 presidents from the Yamauchi clan, and its commercial success largely depended on Hiroshi Yamauchi's personal strategies. As he aged, Hiroshi Yamauchi had to step down from the empire he built.
The author couldn't help but ask, who could take over Nintendo?
But this book only covers up to 1992. No one could have predicted that Hiroshi Yamauchi, obsessively believing Satoru Iwata better embodied Nintendo's philosophy, spent a decade purging his own family's influence, including his son-in-law Minoru Arakawa's faction, and finally passed the reins to Iwata, who'd only joined Nintendo 2 years prior. What impact would this bold move ultimately have on Nintendo? You and I will be the witnesses. All right, game over. That concludes our interpretation of Game Over, the history of Nintendo's global conquest. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.